Hey everybody, welcome back to Building Your Empire with SophieZo. I'm excited for yet another guest episode. I love having these guests on the air to share with you their great tips, tricks, and advice. In case you got tired of me all last year, now you've got all these new people coming in. So without further ado, let me introduce Candy Messer. She is a profitability and growth advisor working with entrepreneurs in the service-based industries to help them have successful businesses. With experience in the bookkeeping industry since 1998, Candy understands the stresses business owners face and offers customized services to meet their varying needs. Her company energizes business owners by removing the burden of compliance tasks as well as working with them to identify issues preventing higher profitability and or growth. As a result of using her services, clients have peace of mind and the freedom to do what they love. Candy is co-author of Business Success with Ease, released in 2013, and Navigating Entrepreneurship, released in 2014, and is the host of the Biz Help for You podcast, which can be found on YouTube, as well as multiple podcast channels. Candy has been married since 1992 to her husband Garth, and they have a son, daughter, son-in-law, and two grandsons. When not running her company, Candy enjoys reading, crocheting, logic puzzles, and spending time with friends and family. Candy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being a guest today. I'm so excited to share you with my people and your knowledge and wisdom. So, you ready to get started?
I am. Thank you for the invitation.
It's my pleasure. So, Candy, the ultimate question that I ask everybody, what is your favorite tip, trick, or advice that will help business owners grow from 6 to 7 levels without killing themselves?
There's a lot that could really go into that, but I think number one is really delegating some things from your own plate to someone else who can help you so you could focus on the things that are going to make you successful and bring in more revenue. If you are doing the mundane tasks of doing your bookkeeping or, making deposits or trying to figure out some of the things in the business administratively, you're not using your time effectively. So figuring out who can help you and creating systems so that they can follow your process. Because a lot of people think they don't want to hand off those tasks because someone's not going to do them correctly, right? Only I know what I'm doing and I can't hand that off. Well, we work too many hours to do those little mundane tasks. So write down your process and have step by step, literally every step that someone could go through and say, oh, the first step is I go to, banking, write checks, right? I'm going to post that, whatever it is in your process, because there's so many things that have to be done. We as business owners wear tons of hats, right? I'm the HR person and the marketing person and the salesperson and, you name it. So that's one of the tips that I give. Another thing that I think is really important too is if you want to be driving that revenue, you need to make yourself your own customer as well. Because so many people think, I need to get the client work done. So they put off invoicing their clients, right? I'll get to it, I'll get to it next week, or I have this big project that needs to be finished. But if you're not consistent with your invoicing, you're losing out on that revenue that you could get it at some point, right? But maybe you end up forgetting to invoice the customer, or they then see it as not important to you to get paid quickly. So they might hold off on paying for a while too. So then you end up with cash flow issues. That brings a lot more stress as well, right? If you can't make your payroll or you can't pay your credit card bills, all of those things. So I recommend to my clients set up an actual calendar, whether it's you do it every Friday, you do it twice a month, you do it the last day of the month, whatever that is, you know that you've set aside that time to create those invoices. And again, if you could have someone else helping you do that, great. But at least have it on the calendar where you know you're creating those invoices, they're going out, and then your customer knows when to expect them. You can have a billing process where they automatically even charge the customer, which saves you time and energy as well, makes things more efficient. So whatever you could do to make your structure more efficient, you're going to be more profitable, right? And it's just going to make that so much easier for you. The other thing I need to point out is you need to not just look at the top line revenue. So many people look at, I want to grow my sales, right? But it's not just that top line. It is, what do you have on that bottom line? So you could be growing your revenue, but increasing your expenses at a greater rate. And so you're actually less profitable. I actually have an example of this where someone came to me a few years ago and said, our company is growing exponentially. Not that long ago, we were a $3 million company. We're about to be a $10 million company before the end of this year, but we have no money in the bank. Why is that? And I actually did an analysis for them and compared about 3 to 4 prior years. And I looked at what was their revenue, what was their profit, and every year that they grew, their profit actually decreased because they were putting it into more labor, more equipment, all these extra costs. And so it was eye-opening for him to actually see those numbers because they were just looking at the top line like, yes, we're going to make it to $10 million. But they were down to about 2% profit, where a couple years before they had much more profit at the end of the year. So those are some of the things that I talk about that are important for business owners to really look at and see what can they be doing to streamline the process and have other people help them so that they can be doing the things that are going to generate even more revenue.
I love that. And I have to say, I can totally relate to that person that was like, I'm making so much more money, but it's like there's not much left over. What's going
Mhm.
on? I experienced that myself in 2020, and I was really bad about looking at my numbers. I will
Mm.
confess. I was bad about looking at my numbers. I was looking at that top line. Oh my God, I made my best month ever. I did this and I did that. And then, someone would look at me, so what was your profit margin? I'd be like, I don't know. So when I
Mhm.
started looking at that, I went, oh my gosh. I didn't get down to 2%, but I had gotten down to like 15% and
Mhm.
total wake up call. And yet that's when you go, okay, now we got to look at not only expenses, but do I need to raise my prices? Do
Mhm.
I need to sell things differently? What do I need to do? Because cutting expenses is great, but in some cases you can't cut the expenses
Right.
because then you can't keep up with the workload, and it's a clear sign you need to raise your prices. So
Mhm.
yeah, knowing your numbers is huge. Um,
Right.
and or go ahead.
I was going to say that's just so true because so many people will not look at the numbers until they just have to get their taxes done, right? So they'll put the stuff together. Even if they're using someone like me that has the financial reports prepared for them, often they're not looking at them. And I don't know, sometimes it might be because they're busy. Maybe they're feeling overwhelmed with understanding. And we even offer, like, we'll sit down with you and go over this information with you. And I don't know if sometimes people are embarrassed, maybe that they don't understand, like the numbers are not as great at math or something, and they're afraid, like, to really take a deep look. So they're thinking, oh, I'll just do it for taxes. But there's so much that you can change by looking at those numbers and finding out, like, oh, we're overspending kind of in this category, and making that change now to be even more profitable because there are some things you probably can make a change to that would make a significant impact.
Yes, definitely love that. And along those lines, if a client comes to you and says, Candy, this year we're making X, and that's our gross revenue this year is X, and we know our numbers thanks to you. Next year we want to increase our gross revenue to, let's say, $1 million. Let's say they're
Mm-hmm.
making a half a million now, and next year they want to make $1 million. Do you have a process, and do you assist them with like taking that number and going backwards in time to map out what it's going to take for them to make $1 million in that next year, and break it down maybe month by month or whatever the case may be? Do you have that kind of process and consulting with your clients?
Those are things that we can do. There's a lot that goes into that, of course, too. So usually if we're going to work with somebody in a more in-depth, relationship, which is really what we want to be able to do too. We don't want to just get information after the fact and just put the data in and give you reports and it goes to the CPA, right? Because again, you're not using that data effectively to make changes in your business. So if we can help you understand where some of those changes can be made, that's great. So the first thing we like to do is actually have a sit down meeting and really learn from you what's going on in the business. Yes, I know you want more revenue, but what else maybe is going on? So we could dig a little bit deeper and find out what some of those challenges might be that's affecting that. But then we look at what are some of the things that you could do to raise that revenue, right? One of them is you've already got customers, right? What can you do to have them purchase more from you, right? Whether it's a restaurant and they do that, suggestion sale, or if it's, maybe a retail customer, what can they do to add on something for a sale? So you've already got that customer. But obviously talking about what can you do to draw in new customers that maybe haven't purchased from you anymore. Maybe it's looking at your pricing and changing what that is, because a lot of people make mistakes with their pricing too, especially if they're selling a product and they're thinking, well, I'm buying my goods at X dollars, so I just need to double the price or triple the price or whatever that might be. But if they're not looking at all of the costs that are in their business, so your overhead, right? You've got rent and insurance and labor and, all of these different things. So if you're not really taking into consideration all of those costs, you might be underpricing your product. And you can't just look at someone down the street that's selling something and what are they selling it at? Oh, I'm going to do the same thing, because they may be set up totally different too. So it's important to really look at like all of these different things to figure out what can you do to drive up that top line number.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much. Any last thoughts on what it takes to go from 6 to 7 figures and beyond that you can think of in this moment?
Well, again, it's proper accounting of your information too. There's a lot of people who do their bookkeeping that actually don't really know how certain things should be posted, and they may be making mistakes, and that can affect what those numbers are. So you might think you're profitable, but you might not be, right? If you're posting some things incorrectly. So it's really understanding all of that. And again, if someone is a smaller business, I understand like they probably want to do it themselves to save on that money. And so if they had some type of understanding, whether they sat down with someone like me that we just explained, this is how you need to do certain things with your transactions so they're accurate, that's one of the things. But making sure you're actually reconciling. This is another misnomer where people think, oh, I'm on QuickBooks Online and the data just feeds in and then it just gets posted. That's not reconciling. That's just posting transactions that import. And those are not always accurate. Sometimes transactions come in twice. Sometimes transactions are missed. And so it's really important to actually take that monthly bank statement and reconcile it in your data file to make sure that you really have everything in there again, because those small little things that are missed can make a big difference in that revenue in the long run.
Yes, that's an excellent point because I have used those in QuickBooks and any other
Right.
bookkeeping software that automatically pulls your transactions in. Many of them automatically categorize. And believe me, if I didn't go in weekly and look at my stuff and go, oh yeah, that was not a meal or entertainment,
Right.
or because some of the
That's the thing.
transactions that some of the ways they auto categorize, I'm like,
Mhm. They
where
make
did you get
mistakes.
that from?
Yes.
It's
So
like,
don't
no,
just
that's
assume that
definitely
it's
not
correct.
that.
Exactly.
So I
Double check everything.
double
Yes.
check everything, yes. And sometimes, and if you do, along those same lines that you mentioned, checking it, reconciling monthly. And I don't know, maybe I'm just, one of those people that's more into my numbers or something, but
Mhm.
I would rather do mine weekly because if I had to do it once a
Yep.
month, I would sit here for hours going,
You can do
and
that
I
too.
don't even have that many transactions, but it would still
Mhm.
drive me nuts to do it once a month.
Yeah, you could do that. It's more like considered like a soft close. So you're not completely reconciling because you actually reconcile to the statement, but you can take your transaction activity and make sure that everything is actually in the software. And then you can just, check mark like, yes, those are cleared so far. But then you just wait until that monthly statement is actually out. You get that final number, then you match it, no discrepancy. That's good. And I know people that want to do that, especially if they're really concerned about cash flow and they want to make sure that everything is in there so they know where they stand. Because that's another thing I tell people, do not trust your bank statement. Don't look at the bank balance, log into your bank and say, oh, I've got $2,000 left so I can pay. There's usually transactions that are pending that don't show yet. And so if you think you have money in there, you may not, and you might end up with those NSF fees. So it's really important to, really double check your information before you assume you have money that you might not have.
Awesome. I love it. Yes, that is always good. You never want to spend more than you have in the bank account. That is not a good thing. So, well, Candy, this has been really great. I really have loved the information that you're giving to my people, and I know they'll love it too. So, in closing, tell them where they can find you, and if there's any way that they can, what ways can they work with you or find out more
Sure.
about you and about the things that you do in your company for other businesses like them.
Sure. Well, you did mention my podcast. So my podcast is Biz Help for You. So you could find it on YouTube. If you just search like the hashtag Biz Help for You, it should come up, or my name, Candy Messer. And I also have a free report that I've given that's on financial lingo. So if you're overwhelmed with the numbers on your financial reports, or you don't understand the difference between cash flow and profit, I do have a free report. If you go to my website, it's affordablebookkeepingandpayroll.com/thank you .pdf. Now that's a little bit long. So if you don't want to type that in, you could just email my company at the word contact, CONTACT, at abandp.com. Then we can actually just email you the link. You could click download. It's really easy. If you're interested in working with us, we are a bookkeeping company. We're a payroll company. We handle a lot of the compliance, including handling the employee retention tax credits too that people are applying for. You can actually go to my website as well, abandp.com, and there's a button that says get started on the first page. It's a questionnaire you could just fill in, and then we'd set up a time to chat. So any of those ways. And my phone number for those who like to call is 310-534-5577.
Awesome. Thanks again, Kanie, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. And thank you to all my listeners for hanging out and listening to us talk about numbers and money and all those good things. And we'll see you again next week.